Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. Keith, how you doing, man?
Man, I am doing all right, but this is going to be a weird show. I'm not sure we've ever had a show where we are this early in the season starting to talk about the off season, because
we certainly haven't.
They're done.
All we've been doing since we started is talking about successful teams, more or less. We went in 2017. It was kind of a reset, rebuild year. Even then, we went to 10 wins, then 11, then 12. Then, I truly thought that we were going to be in the same conversation this year. We both looked at the offense and just went, "How could this not be a top 5 offense?" And
it was until Wilson got hurt.
Yeah, but not. It just didn't feel like we had all the complete information, though, at that point.
Yeah.
Like there were still some flaws there that we could probably discuss.
True, but you can't argue with the results being the number one offense in terms of yards per play and points per drive. So
and limited only by opportunity.
Yeah, and so the offense was roaring, but we go into this game against Arizona, and this is the second straight game with that once Wilson's back from his injury, and he looks lost. He looks terrible. And the offense is going nowhere.
I will have to say, I do get that. I really do. And I'm in there with you right there, and with a number of fans. It's just kind of crazy. However, just to temper that a little bit, we have played 2 of the best NFC teams on the schedule, including just now the best team in the NFC, the Arizona Cardinals. It's like, I get that. I get the offense is completely dysfunctional and stuff, but the level of competition the last 2 games has also been at a high level, and the Seahawks have just not been able to match that. In fact, the only wins the Seahawks have this year so far are against, sub 500 teams, with the exception of now the 49ers. And they're just at 500. So, yeah. And we've lost every other, currently competitive playoff contending team on the schedule so far.
Mm-hmm.
It just is what it is. So
they've lost to anyone that's remotely good,
right? Which tells me,
for
I
San
think,
Francisco, and they've beaten the Jaguars and a Colts team that is still trying to figure out, who they are.
Right. So, which tells us really everything that we need to know about what's going to happen in the next 8 weeks. 7 weeks now. We'll probably be real competitive in the games that are against teams that are less than, and that Rams game is probably going to be a loss, and that'll probably be the one that puts us out of contention. And then the Arizona one at the end, I'm just not even sure that we could beat an average Arizona team with a whole bunch of replacement players there. Okay.
Well, I don't know about that. I know that at some point,
though, right?
At some point, Russell Wilson is going to remember how to play football, and we go back to being Russ. The problem is that it's going to happen way too late to save the season.
And it's hard to really say that with complete confidence, too, when you take a look at the way that last year unfolded.
No, see, I do, because last year unfolded in a way where he lost confidence in the scheme. The scheme basically fell apart the play call was throw it deep on every play, and that was it. And he just stopped. Like Wilson's numbers weren't terrible. They were still pretty good. But
do you get that sense this year too? Like, it seems like that's the thing.
Well,
he's going away from those short tempo type stuff and trying to hold the ball and get the ball down the field more than not.
I don't know if that's completely true. I don't think he's reading the field well right now. Like I said after the first game that he was back against Green Bay, that he was just going through his reads really slowly. And in this game, it didn't feel like he was going through his reads at all. Like he just was struggling to figure out where to go with the ball.
So the separation is in the preparation.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. He is the game. It feels like back when in his rookie year when the game just moved really fast for him.
I think that something outside of football is causing a distraction for him.
No, I don't.
So
I don't subscribe to any of that. And unless something comes out that says, "Hey, this is what's going on,and
I don't usually subscribe to that sort of stuff either.
I'm not even gonna
speculate. I get that. I understand that, but we are 3-7. He hasn't looked great, and you could point to a couple other games where he was only really good in a quarter or a half of a game.
I mean, the lack of a running game for over most of the season
it
has
really
been
is huge.
The lack of pass blocking has been
disappointing.
It's been really disappointing. What was maddening about this game was that it wasn't just the usual suspects that were struggling. Gabe Jackson, who's been like the one, good piece of the line all year, had a really rough game. And we're not used to seeing that. Like he's been the one guy who's, actually played well throughout the entire season so far. And then he just had a rough game.
I thought all the vets in this game kind of had a rough game, with the exception of Tyler Lockett. I think everyone else was just kind of struggled a little bit, across Damian Lewis and Dwayne Brown, I think, played better in this game, but everyone else on the offensive line kind of struggled. Russell Wilson obviously struggled. Penny went out after one play with a hamstring injury.
Freaking play.
He did come back in the second half, though, which maybe says he's not done for the season, but he's done. He's just done. He looked great on that one play, though.
Yes, in one play. No, at this point, I got to tell you, he may have looked great in that one play, but DJ Dallas looked better during his plays. So at this point, I'm done. I'm done with Penny. Like,
sure. And he's not going to be back next year. So no matter what happens, it's still so Trey Brown. Go ahead.
I was like, Carson's out because he had neck surgery. Penny needs to just disappear.
And we can't rely on Carson to come back next year. We're going to have to go running back hunting this offseason.
This is a Alex Collins and DJ Dallas running game for the rest of the year. And I'm okay with that. Like,
or some unsigned vet not yet to be named. I mean, it's just kind of crazy.
There's no reason to bring in a vet on a team that's 3-7.
You might as well find out what Josh Johnson has on the practice squad.
Yeah. Have him play. At this point, honestly, you're 3-7. The season's over. You're not going to the playoffs. You need to start evaluating young players. So who do you know that's on this team that has no value and won't be back next year? Let's start with Rashad Penny. You know what? Have fun. It's been real. Peace out. Let's get Josh Johnson on the roster and see what happens. And there's plenty of other guys that we can say the same thing to. And that's where
we may have to. I mean, Trey Brown went out with a patellar tendon injury, which is just extremely unfortunate for the young guy because he was really trying to show up, and he was showing up.
Yeah, getting him in there was part of this defense's turnaround. It was just they had competent enough play at cornerback for everything else to start working. And now he's out for the year and probably part of next year. Because that's what happens when you get a patellar tendon injury.
Yeah, it depends. It really does depend on if it's a small tear, if it's a full rupture, and he's got to have major surgery. So we'll see. No word yet as of recording. So we are 3-7. We lost this game 23-13. The Cardinals are now 9-2, best in the NFC, best in the NFL. I will add. Does that change anything for you at all when you look at this game? I mean, I know it was against Colt McCoy and stuff, but man, they've got a nice team.
Yeah, but I don't know. Do they have a nice team? I mean,
they're 9-2. Let's be real. Let's give them a little bit of credit.
Their two best players on offense didn't play.
And they're still won decidedly against a weakened Seattle opponent on the road, which was exactly what they needed to do.
without their two best players
It tells you a lot
on
more about
offense.
Seattle, I think, than it does about the Cardinals.
Yes, that's what I'm saying is I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, okay, they lost to Arizona, but Arizona's like the class of the NFL. They might be when they're healthy, but this wasn't against the class of the NFL. This was against a team with a backup quarterback and their top receiver both out.
So I just put something up on the screen.
did.
Is there still a chance at 3-7? You could say mathematically there's still a chance at 3-7, but they have to win out to get to 10 games.
Yeah, they've got to win out at this point to get to 10-7.
There is no indicators up till this very moment in the season so far that you could point to and say that that is even a possibility at this point. Now, we talked a couple weeks ago. We said, okay, we're coming back from the bye. Green Bay and Arizona, tough opponents. It's possible we could lose both, and we could still have somewhat of a positive feeling that we could make a run if those games were competitive. They weren't. They weren't competitive. They got shut out against Green Bay. I think the formula does change. They just got ran over in this one. And yeah, I mean they're not competitive against the good teams. They weren't competitive. Now, if the light turns back on for Russ like it was early in the season, and suddenly this offense starts humming the way it's supposed to and the way it's talented enough to do, okay, then they can go on a run. But right now I see nothing that gives me confidence that this team's going to be able to do that. So we can talk. You want to keep talking about the details of this game, or what do you want to actually come in here and do today? Well, what I wanted to talk about is a little bit about, we look at the defense and we're like, okay, the defense is much improved, right? Well, they gave up 23 points in this game. They also gave up 7 more that didn't show up on the scoreboard, but Arizona's kicker just had a day, right? Mm-hmm. He missed 3 kicks, 2 field goals, and neither of the field goals were long, but 2 field goals and an extra point. I mean, that's 7 points. And they were on the field another game in 2 in a row now with over 40 minutes on the field. They gave up 413 total yards with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins out. Yeah. So the defense, Seattle on the really offense, they've only scored 1 touchdown in the last 8 quarters. Got shut out in one of those games. I mean, the whole thing is broken. When you don't play well on offense, obviously your defense is going to just lose steam. And that's what happened down the stretch. It's like they just didn't have anything left. And you got players like Wagner and Brooks who made a ton of tackles in this game, but some of the reason that they made a ton of tackles is they were targeted. Specifically in the short passing game, they combined to give up 17 receptions on 19 targets for 158 yards and 1 touchdown, while having 15 total tackles for Brooks and 14 total tackles for Wagner. Statistically, on paper, they look great. In production, they failed. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go that far, because I thought watching the game, I thought Brooks played really well. And I thought, Bobby Wagner's still one of the best in the game. And so, well, of course, Brian Monet had a good game, and Sidney Jones had a decent game tackling and so forth. I thought, but obviously not enough. Yeah, total. I mean, I was just to overcome that deficit on the time of possession. It's just, you can't do that. Yeah, I mean, part of it is like all of the receptions and all that. That's kind of by design. The Seahawks zone is set up to allow the ball to be dumped off over the middle and then come up and make the tackle. And true. So they gave up 17 receptions, but that's designed to have those receptions go and land in front of them. Okay, but is the defense designed to give Colt McCoy a stat line of 35 completions on 44 attempts for 328 yards and 2 touchdowns, Keith? Or Zach Ernst, who I mentioned, the pass rush wasn't there. He had 8 receptions, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. I told you that would be close to my nightmare scenario in this game, and sure enough, that's the guy that did it to us. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and then AJ Green had 4 receptions for 78 yards. Rondale Moore had 11 receptions, now only for 51 yards. So you're like, okay, but he still had 11 catches But it was, as much as I hate to say this, it was nice to see a team like Arizona being able to take advantage of what the defense is giving them. And that's kind of what this game was. They knew that Colt McCoy was their quarterback. It wasn't Kyler Murray. They played within themselves. And I just thought it was a better coached, better produced game overall.
Yeah.
And and it's hard because I'm not a Pete Carroll basher and all that kind of stuff. I'm really trying to focus on what's happening, what's going on and stuff. And you just can't argue sometimes with the production on the field. It just is what it is sometimes.
Well, I think what we're missing in all of this is the fact that Arizona's offensive line played really, really well, and Seattle's played really poorly. And that has a lot to do with what we saw. I mean, Colt McCoy did have that stat line. He also wasn't pressured. He was able to drop back and do whatever he wanted. And Seattle's defense just didn't pressure him. They didn't move him off his spot. They didn't give him any problems.
Yeah.
And so that to me,
when your most productive player on defense was Brian Monet.
Yeah.
You got some other issues going on.
Yeah. So
no disrespect to Brian Monet, he had a great game, but nonetheless.
But
there's no edge pressure.
Compare that to Wilson, who was, in both these games, he's getting pressured before he can get to the top of his drop.
What has happened, Keith, to Darrell Taylor? Like, we haven't been calling out Darrell Taylor's name for like 5-6 weeks now.
I don't know.
Did they change his role? What's going on? Why isn't he showing up in the stat book?
Well, he was banged up there for a couple of weeks. He even missed a game. And I think that is part of it. And then they're using him more sparingly now. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but they actually started Benson Mayoa at the strong side linebacker spot instead of Darrell Taylor.
Yep. Right.
And so they're using Taylor more as a defensive end. They're bringing him up at the 5 tech at times instead of, on the Leo side. They're moving him around a little bit, but in the end, it's not helping him.
Right. And they're bringing in Ryan Neal more.
Yeah. I think they're trying to hide his inability to cover and handle those responsibilities as an outside linebacker. So he's not getting as much playing time, and they're trying to just use him as an end, which I think is probably smart. Like, give him the starting job.
This year, absolutely. He just had a lot on his plate, and
give him the starting job at the 7 tech and let him just feast. Like, I mean, I get that. Okay, you've got Carlos Dunlap, and he's the vet and whatever. But where are we in the season? What has it gotten us? We're 3-7. You got to play the younger kids. It's time to let Darrell Taylor be a full-time player and let him do his thing.
Well, let's talk about this, because Seattle's lost 5 of the last 6 games, with the lone win coming against the Jaguars. Mm-hmm. It's done. There's a chance here on next week's game. Happens to be Monday night game. We'll see. I understand that the Monday night games can now be flexed after week 12 or beginning at week 12. I think it would probably be good for the NFL to flex that game, but that's just me. And I hate to say that, but it is what it is. Let's go through the roster just a little bit, and and I don't have the practice squad pulled up, so maybe we can do that. And I also wanted to talk to you about not a fan generated trade, but a trade generated by Vic Lombardi that involves Russell Wilson in the offseason and the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
To see how you might start to think about what the team looks like going forward. So do you have the practice squad by any chance?
I do.
So let's go through that list really quick, and maybe you could help identify a couple of players that you'd like to see up on the 53.
Okay. Well, you've got, let's see if we could go through.
Then you don't have to name everybody, just a couple.
Yeah. I'd like to see like Josh Johnson. We've already talked about.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, because Seattle is going to be in the market for a running back. Mm-hmm. We know that Carson's under contract, but he had the season-ending neck, and we just don't know. I think if we have Chris Carson back next year, we could view that as a bonus. Penny's not going to be back. Collins is only under contract this year. Dallas and Homer are going to be back. I think that we need like a premier 1A running back. Let's find out what Josh Johnson has, just so we can see if he could be in the equation next year.
Yeah, I'd like to see them bring up Miles Adams. He's an undersized 290-pound defensive tackle who, he's a guy that's going to be able to
affect the quarterback. That's a
guy. He's going to be terrible against the run, but great, as a pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see him up, and a guy like Robert Kimdiche
might as well
cut, because he's been a healthy scratch half the games, and when he hasn't made an impact. So you might as well give the kid a chance to play. The guys that I want to see play aren't on the practice squad; they're on the roster, and that would be.
Well, let's talk about that then.
The two offensive tackles, with Forsyth and Curran.
I did notice that Curran did have some snaps in this game. I didn't see the snap count, but I did see that he had a grade in this game, so it told me that he was in there for a while. I didn't pay attention, to be completely honest with you. I know that Pro Football Focus wasn't happy with him, but whatever. Did you see anything?
I didn't. I didn't realize that he even got on the field. I haven't been able to go.
He was the lowest rated offensive player on Seattle in that game. But like I said, take it with a grain of salt. Pro Football Focus on his 3 plays with guys that don't grade offensive linemen particularly well, right? Because they don't really know what they're looking at. Forsyth, right?
Yeah. So the Forsyth and Curran are the 2 guys I'd like to see get an opportunity, get them out there. Because I want to know if either of them can play. And we know that Shell is really, really struggling this year. He just has never refound the form that he had at the beginning of last year. So
same can be said with Dakota Shepley. Let's find out what Dakota Shepley is about. We brought him on the deal. We've kept him on the roster all year. Let's find out if that was even a good thing or not.
Yeah, the Seahawks, they loved him. They were so happy that he was available. They had never expected him to be available, but they were able to grab him off waivers when the 49ers tried to sneak him through to the practice squad. And so, okay, you really like this guy. You really thought he was, worth keeping a roster spot for and all that. Let's see what he's got. He's been on the team long enough, should know the playbook and know what he's doing. Let's find out if he's the future, because we know that Fuller's certainly not. And honestly, Postic's not either. So
another guy in defense that I would be interested in that's on the practice squad too would be that Tanner Muse. I don't know if he's still there or if he got cut and I just didn't see it, but
he is. He's there, linebacker.
A guy like that might be interesting because he really played well in college as a strong safety, and then they moved him with the Raiders to linebacker, and I'm wondering just what he is, because he's very fast and he's very physical, and it'd be interesting to find out if he could even be like a special teams stud, if nothing else. The other thing that we've got going on right now is cornerback. We don't know what's going on with DJ Reed. It looks like we've lost Trey Brown for the season. Sidney Jones is playing okay. John Reed is a slot guy that really hasn't played a lot. And then Bless Austin is the other guy that's up on the roster. I noticed they brought Gavin Helsop up this last week, and he had a few snaps as well. So that thing's just a mess at this point.
Well, it's been a mess. It was a mess in the offseason. It was a mess during training camp. It was a mess during the preseason. Getting Trey Brown and back from his injury and able to play for 5 games was great. But then guess what? Now we're in a mess again.
There's 3 areas where I think John Schneider and the front office really screwed up this year going into the season. Offensive line, specifically center, cornerback, and running back. Yeah. They just had those holes when we were evaluating the team early on. This is a playoff team. This is a team that we're thinking is going to come up and be very similar in record to what they were last year. And they had some key improvements in certain areas. Thought the pass rush was going to be a little better than it turned out to be. But there were still holes that we went into the season with. One was at corner, obviously. The other one, I think, at center. And then running back, I thought, was just weak, given the fact that they were depending on a player that was constantly injured, and then a player that was constantly injured. We 2 players at the top of our depth chart were guys that probably weren't going to play any more than like 10 or 12 games for the entire year. And that's problematic to me. That's not a way that you approach your running game, especially given the fact that Pete Carroll prioritized it in the offseason. So anybody else?
Well, I think when we're looking at you listed off cornerbacks, I think what we're going to see is you're going to see Ryan Neal get a lot of run, and you're going to see Ugo Amadi get a lot of play. And those are two players that honestly should be playing at this point because Ugo Amadi's made some mistakes, and Ryan Neal isn't. He's also had a couple of off games, but for the most part, those are two guys that have. I
think Ryan Neal's been one of our better defensive players in the year.
Like I said, he's had a couple of off games, but the rest of the games he's been solid. Those are the two guys you're going to expect to see a lot of. They're going to get a chance to play. Sidney Jones is going to be out there. Bless Austin's probably going to be out there. I think those are going to be your four cornerbacks going forward, and you're just going to have to make do.
Okay, so let the speculation part of the podcast begin now.
Uh-oh. All right, so hit me with this trade because I'm
curious, this is interesting to me.
I'm curious where that's going to go.
All right, so Vic Lombardi, out of the Broncos, he's like a radio guy in at 92.5 in Denver, the altitude. Has proposed, not the attitude. The altitude, yes, has proposed trading the entire 2022 Broncos draft for Russell Wilson, the entire draft.
Okay.
And what that means is instead of getting like 3 first-round picks for, in most scenarios that we've talked about, you're getting the Broncos' entire draft. And here's what that means. Round 1, Broncos native pick. Round 2, their native pick. Round 2 from the Los Angeles Rams. Round 3, their own pick. And round 3 from the Los Angeles Rams. That's 5 pick in the top 100. Then they have their own pick in rounds 4, 5. And then they have a bunch of picks from other teams. Another round 5 from the Lions, which would be high. Round 6 from the Eagles. Round 7 from the 49ers. And round 7 from the Lions. So that's their draft. It's 11 total picks. 5 picks in the top 100. Plus you add in Seattle's draft, which right now is native 2nd round pick, which is going to be high. Native 3rd round pick, the Jets 4th round pick, which is going to be high, our own 4th round pick. So that would be 3 4th round picks total, 5th round pick, and a Jaguars 6th round pick, which looks like it's going to be pretty high. So honestly, overall, that would be 17 picks, which given John Schneider, you could, theoretically say turn that into like 11 or 12 picks, move up, move around, etc. It would really kind of give you an opportunity to reset, maybe not completely rebuild, but you'd reset with a bunch of young talent that I think this team desperately needs, but you'd go at it without your franchise quarterback.
Honestly, straight up, I think that trade is crap, and there's no way I'd ever even consider it.
11 picks, the entire draft.
11 picks, and all of them are in round 6 and 7. Like a lot of them.
5 picks in the top 100, Keith.
Doesn't matter. You are not replacing one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with 5 picks in the top 100.
No.
Only one of which is
say that.
Only one of which is a first round pick, and it's not even going to be a high.
Here's my idea.
It's going to be a middle of the road.
Here's my idea. If this were to happen, I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying if it were to happen, I think the idea would be that you get all these picks. You start accumulating picks. So you get this. This is kind of the beginning. This is year 1 of a rebuild. Russell Wilson's got 2 years remaining on his contract. He's getting paid. He's at a high level. You jettison maybe Bobby Wagner. Maybe even you trade like a DK Metcalf. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud right now. You maybe get 1 or 2 additional high level picks for like a DK. You just start accumulating picks, but you don't get your quarterback in this year, in 2022. you go ahead and be bad in 2022, but you've got kind of you're building your nucleus, and in 2023 you go get your quarterback. And so you've got your established roster. Now you've got a bunch of second-year guys, and then your window begins with your new quarterback and your 4 or 5 year contract. So I'm saying that might be the best way to build a Super Bowl contender in 3 years.
No, see, here's how you actually build a Super Bowl contender in 3 years. If you're going to do that, one, you don't trade Metcalf because he's like 22 or 23 still. He's really young.
And you don't trade one high-level guy for just another high-level guy.
Yeah. So you go ahead, you go ahead and pay him because he deserves it, and he's good, and he's going to be good for a long time. So you do that. Second of all, you don't give up a franchise quarterback like Russell Wilson for what would be way below market value, which is what that particular trade is.
When you add up all those picks, you are correct. You are absolutely correct.
Way below market value.
As you drop down, these picks become way less valuable.
It's way below market value. So what I would say is those 5 picks in the top 100.
Maybe you throw a future first into that pile.
Is a starting point, and throw 2 more first round picks in there.
Well, yeah, okay.
Or a first and a second. But you're
trying to be realistic. Yeah. So I think maybe a first,
and so
maybe an additional first.
What did the Bears offer?
Yeah, Seahawks? 3 firsts and a second, and
3 firsts, a second, and a third, and 2 defensive starters.
Right.
Which
those 3 firsts are equal to not this draft would not even be equal to. It'd be about the equivalency of 2 first-round picks, because
it's about the equivalent of 2 first-round picks.
The Broncos do have high picks in each round. Plus, they've got a couple other teams that have high picks. So
about the equivalent of 2 first-round picks. So the Bears offered a first, a second, a third, and 2 defensive starters on top of what that particular trade.
Do you think it's realistic that Seattle will be able to pull that sort of draft capital from another team after this season?
Yes.
And Russell Wilson's easier to trade with 2 years remaining on his contract. So whichever team gets him also has an easier kind of pill to swallow as well.
Well, yeah. And so the Seahawks don't have to just eat a ton of dead money if they trade him, which they would have had last year. So what's much more likely, if you're looking at all of this, is a trade where you see the Seahawks send Russell Wilson to Miami.
Getting like Tua back.
You get Tua and a haul of picks. So you've got your bridge quarterback who you can see if he's got anything. You kind of don't expect anything from, but he's your bridge quarterback for a year, and you got a pile of picks, and they're going to be better. They're going to be higher in the rounds than the Broncos picks were anyway. And so I think that's the Broncos will be a team that will be, I'm sure, bidding, for Wilson.
They really are interested in a quarterback and solving that problem.
Yeah, but I think just saying, doing the Saints and Ricky Williams trade,
where they just
give up their entire draft for one player.
I do think that we're going to start to hear more about this, A, and B, I think that the values are going to go increasingly higher the longer you wait, because the quarterback class in this draft is not good.
Yeah. And so
his value is going to continue to rise.
Yep.
Because there's also not very many free agent quarterbacks emerging.
No, there's.
And I don't have that list,
never
but I've seen it before, and it's not great.
There's never is. So you're gonna go.
Rodgers is out there at the top because he negotiated that, but after that, there's nothing really.
Yeah. So you're looking at, and Rodgers is going to be 39.
Yes, right.
So, but you're looking at, if you don't want to go Rodgers because he's old or too expensive, or you just miss out, your second best option is going to be what? Jared Goff. After he's cut.
Okay. So let's get out of here. I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. In case you don't get us for our follow-up show this week, we're going to preview the game coming up against the Washington Football Club later in the week. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to you, all of our listeners, all that kind of stuff. I know it's hard Thanks for joining us, though. I appreciate it, kind of walking through this stuff. Just like us, we're fans. We like to talk about the Seahawks, and we enjoy all the winning stuff. And we're very happy and pleased that we went through a big, long stretch where it was just amazing. But it does seem like things are going to be changing now. It's just, we've gone over the tipping point. And so let's just go all along for that ride and see what that looks like. So, okay. Follow Keith on Twitter @MyersNFL. I'm NWC Hawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com is our website. Find us on your favorite podcast app. Just search Seahawks Playbook Podcast as well as YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk. Keith is at MyersNFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.